First, I want to bring the regards and the compliments of the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of the National Treasury and Economic Planning, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, who has been aboard, who's been the chair of ARC, and they've been closely associated with AARC for many years. He was to be with you, but because of other official commitment, he asked me to come to be with you this morning. I want to say that it is my great pleasure to join you this morning in the 59th Biannual Workshop of the African Economic Research Consortium, which is themed Youth Demographic Dividend, Migration and Economic Opportunities in African Economies here in Nairobi, Kenya today. I'm also indeed pleased and honored to be amidst this gathering of policymakers, top academicians, representatives of multilateral organizations, development partners, think tanks, and researchers here today. The theme of the 49th biannual workshop of the AERC plenary resonates well with the aspirations of the government of Kenya. Efforts towards empowering the youth through education and developing employable skills and creation of job opportunities. We are living in an unprecedented time of high youth population in Africa. As we have been shown, according to the African Union, there are over 400 million young people aged between 15 to 35 years. Kenya alone is projected to have a population of 63.9 million in the year 2030. Of this, 22.3 million, which is about 35%, will be youth aged 15 to 34 years. And then the youth in Kenya presents an opportunity for them to drive the economy if embodied with the right skill sets and access to gainful employment opportunities. However, youth in Kenya and more so in Africa face a number of challenges in accessing employment, healthcare, and skills to match the job market requirements. According to the Africa Development Bank, about 10 to 12 million youth enter the job market, but only a quarter are absorbed in the workplace in Africa. The lack of employment opportunities have pushed the young people to poverty and desperation. Over 80 million youth in sub-Saharan Africa live in poverty. The situation is exacerbated by the migration of able-bodied men and women from the continent, depleting the skilled labor and human capital. On the flip side, the migration can be a boon due to, of course, remittances and cross-border trade and investment flows. To this end, youth are an untapped resource, and clearly the demographic changes in Africa present an opportunity to accelerate the socio-economic transformation of the continent through harnessing the demographic dividend. Ladies and gentlemen, African governments have put in place measures to address the youth unemployment, harness youth skills, and generally improve their quality of life. I would want to use the example for Kenya. Kenyan policy interventions to improve youth well-being have included a collaboration with the private sector and development partners. The interventions have focused on development and empowerment of the youth by exposing them to entrepreneurial leadership and digital skills. Some of these policies include, for example, the National Employment Authority Act of 2016, which established an authority that supports youth access to employment, the Kenya Vision 2030, the Agriculture Sector Development Strategy, the Green Economy Strategy and Implementation Plan, the Kenya Digital Blueprint, and the National Disability Mainstreaming Strategy, and finally, the Kenya National Policy on Gender and Development. The Kenya government has aligned her policies on youth development to AU policy frameworks, such as the Africa Youth Charter, the Youth Decade Plan of Action, and the Malabo Decision on Youth Empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenya has initiated several programs and activities to foster youth participation in the country's economy development, and these include one, the human capital development through education systems. Kenya has reviewed the 844 curriculum system, which came into place in 1985, and has now been succeeded by the CBC, the competency-based curriculum. Kenya has also leveraged its education system to equip students with skills that are required in the labor market. Initiatives such as free primary education, free secondary education, and free technical and vocational education, and expansion of the university education access have provided necessary pathways for skills development. In the true spirit of tapping the demographic dividend, the government of Kenya has established the National Youth Service to foster youth active participation in the national development programs and activities. This has enhanced economic opportunities for youth in Kenya. The third is a Youth Enterprise Development Fund, which was established through the Public Finance Management Act to enhance creation of employment for youth through enterprise development. The fund is a premier project of the Kenya Vision 2030 under the social pillar. The Youth Fund mandate is promoting enterprise development as a strategic pathway for harnessing and increasing economic opportunities and youth participation in nation building. And fourth is the Kenya Youth Employment and Opportunities, which is funded by the World Bank. And this has seen about 69,000 youth receive grants at the tune of about Kenya shillings 2.7 billion. The project is aimed to reach 280,000 youth in urban and rural areas in about 17 counties. The project led for skill interventions and business support, and about 86% of youth earned a wage or were self-employed. 20% of those employed prior to the interventions saw an increase in income, and 48% of the recipients of business support interventions created jobs for others. The project is extended for scaling up across all counties. Ladies and gentlemen, the government of Kenya works alongside, like I had mentioned earlier, the private sector to promote youth development. The Kenya Private Sector Alliance in 2023 launched the Kenya Youth Employment and Entrepreneurship Accelerator Program. Through the program, KEPSA has initiated a drive to create 1 million jobs and entrepreneurship avenues for young men and women in 5 years. The program aims to accelerate and scale up small enterprises through business financing, market access, business coaching, and mentorship. The program also aims to support the digital transformation of small enterprises and creating digitally enabled jobs. The program will partner with the TVET ecosystems that consists of youth polytechnics, technical training institutes, and the national polytechnics in Kenya to deliver its objectives. The project expects to scale up to about 200,000 small enterprises, establish 47 county business hubs, and accelerate about 10,000 startups. Investment in digital economy has been prioritized in recent years to expand youth employment. The President of Kenya and the whole cabinet is committed to make Kenya an ICT innovation hub to leverage on digital technology for economic transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, other private sector initiatives include the Safaricom Foundation's Wezesha program. The Wezesha program has partnered with the Generation Kenya, which is funded by the USAID and McKinsey and Company, and the government of Kenya through technical vocational education and trainings to provide capacity building to unemployed youth aged between 18 and 35 with the knowledge, skills, and tools to increase their ability to be employed. The program has targeted about 1,600 youth aged between 18 and 25 years in vocational training centers across the country. Over 9,000 secondary school leavers have benefited from the skill support, with about 88% employed in decent jobs. Safaricom Foundation has made commitment to support the initiative to a tune of about Kenya shillings 39 million in the next 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, in the fourth medium-term plan, which is the Kenyans' 5-year plan, under human capital development, the government of Kenya seeks to recruit a total of 116,000 teachers, continue to undertake education reforms, expand infrastructure in all learning institutions, and strengthen linkages between industry and training institutions. Our priority will also be given to the boy child, youth and women economic empowerment initiatives, such as talent development. We call it the Talanta Hela, sports and arts infrastructure development. Target, finance, and other affirmative action initiatives as well. In addition, 40,000 youth will be trained annually in paramilitary and national service and technical vocational skills. 10,000 youth will be engaged in the National Youth Service commercial enterprises. We look forward to scaling up the implementation of the 1-year paid national internship for students graduating from teachers, technical and medical colleges and universities by collaborating with industry players and promoting industrial attachment for over 20,000 students and lecturers. In summary, from the Kenyan case, it is evident that Africa's future is in the hands of the youth, and thus investing in their education, training, and job creation is a panacea for the continent's growth and prosperity. With these few remarks, I want to declare the 49th AERC Biannual Workshop open, and I want to wish you very fruitful deliberations.
We are focusing today on unemployment and challenge of demographic shifts and migration. You remember I started by talking about migration in my opening. As I said, who are the target? We have our researchers who are here. We have the international experts who will be speaking. Then we also have the policy makers. We'll have, at the end of the day, a policy panel where we will essentially have the policy makers telling us how we can build from what we are doing today, especially because after that, we would, sorry, after this, we would like to do research to inform migration policy, which will bring us together again in June to discuss the same topic based on the papers that the researcher will be preparing between now and June. And after that, we hope to have this paper of high quality to be published in the Journal of African Economies. So the topic of today is really to deep dive into the interconnection among youth, employment, demographic shifts, migration, and economic opportunities. We will do so by using presentation and high-level panel discussion. And all this is driven by rigor and latest research and policy insight, which is relevant for the 21st century. We will be exploring 3 core issues. First is youth unemployment. By 2025, that means 2 years from now, more than 263 million young are going to be economically vulnerable. That's what the ADB reports have told us. The youth account for 60% of Africa's jobless population. That means if we are to drive economic policy in Africa, we need to pay attention to those 60% of the youth that are without employment. So we have unemployment for the youth, but also for the women. We should address that definitely in the public sector, but the private sector would be the key. So we would be discussing about the entrepreneurial elements of the job market. We'll be discussing the technology that can help the youth become self-employed, and then we'll then discussing the research that should lead us into that. The second topic that we want to discuss is the demographic dividend, because we think that well-educated population will be the main element for Africa to become active in shaping the world in the coming century. So if the youth is properly engaged in productive employment, so countries like Kenya or any other African countries will be in a better position to boost its growth opportunity. And finally, migration is important because not all those youth can be employed on the continent. Some of them are seeking to go and work somewhere else. We do have some governments that have put together programs to facilitate migration of Africans. One of them is the UK policy with the government of Kenya. Most African countries have the same. As researchers, we need to deep dive into those agreements and see the extent to which this can be turned to the advantage of Africa. We also have the 2021 UK-Kenya Migration Agreement. I've talked about that. But we also know that what is really also important is that most of the migration movement is mainly from the internally displaced. So we need to understand all the elements that are causing the internal displacement of population in Africa. And we know most of this is poverty, but some of that is also a conflict. So these are the 3 main elements that we would be exploring. So this will then provide elements for actionable research issue for youth unemployment. And then finally, we will then be commissioning papers. That's why the discussion today, we are hoping that you will give us ideas, suggestions as to what are the best ways of doing that research, such as to be able to properly inform the policy making on the continent. And as I said, I hope to see you in June when we discuss the papers that we'll be commissioning from January on the same topic based on the suggestion and insights that you will provide us for this session.